Is murder ever justified? The Gypsy Rose Blanchard case is highly controversial, and people will have different opinions on this topic. I am going to tell you why Gypsy Rose Blanchard is not justified in the murdering of her mother because, one, murder is never okay regardless of the circumstance. Two, she showed no remorse for her actions. Her mother was mentally ill and therefore abused her child. She could have found another way to escape her abuse, and crimes deserve jail time and proper punishment. She deserves to serve her full sentence in prison for charges of murder without the possibility of parole. So let me first refresh you on this case. Gypsy Rose's mother had told people that her daughter had suffered from leukemia, asthma, and muscular dystrophy. She had the mental capacity of a 7-year-old, and her mother actually told people that she was younger than she actually was. There was no evidence that she ever had any of these illnesses. In 2015, Gypsy Rose and her boyfriend murdered Dee Dee Blanchard, and Gypsy Rose was sentenced to 10 years in prison but will soon be eligible for parole. So now that you have a general understanding about this case, let me tell you why murder is not justified. My first argument is that murder is just simply never okay. Gypsy Rose Blanchard consciously decided to kill her own mother, which is morally wrong. Although Gypsy Rose experienced a lot of abuse from her mother still didn't deserve to die, and a person does not deserve to be killed. Her mother deserved jail time, certainly, but being murdered is an extreme measure that did not have to happen in this circumstance, and murder also doesn't have to happen in any circumstance. My next argument is that Gypsy Rose was not justified in killing her mother because Dee Dee Blanchard was actually mentally ill. Dee Dee had Munchausen syndrome by proxy, which is actually a mental disorder in which a parent or caregiver exaggerates, fabricates, or induces illness in another person for attention and sympathy from others. So it was actually suggested by professionals that people with this illness may have suffered emotional trauma or illness during childhood. They may have a personality disorder, or they also might hold grudges against healthcare professionals from some experiences they've had prior. So Dee Dee Blanchard was not justified in abusing her daughter at all, but she was mentally ill, and that's to be taken into account, and therefore she could not help the actions that she has committed. She should have gotten some sort of treatment to help her become a better mother. She was obviously unfit for being a mother, but she was mentally ill and she wasn't evil. So she didn't deserve to die. My next argument is that Gypsy Rose and her boyfriend showed no remorse or regret of committing a murder. The couple was actually seemingly proud of their actions, and they showed no emotions towards this being wrong at all. Actually, after the murdering of Dee Dee Blanchard, Gypsy Rose's boyfriend took to Facebook and posted, quote, "The bitch is finally dead." He also said in an interview that if he were to do this again, he would have done it differently, but he would have done it again. So that just shows you that, especially the boyfriend, but also Gypsy Rose, do not have any remorse or any guilty emotions towards what they've done at all. Another thing I would like to mention to support my claim is that Gypsy Rose should have called the authorities before choosing to actually commit a murder. She should have been more diligent in telling someone else other than her boyfriend about the situation because her boyfriend was obviously biased towards her. She was friends with her neighbor who was her age, so she could have told her neighbor, and her neighbor could have done something about this. As she was a teenage girl, she could have known to call the cops or tell her parents. And she also, Gypsy Rose had contact with her father, so she could have told her father that something was off, could have lived with him for a little, and she also could have called 911, which she had never done. She was also out in public with her mother a lot, since Dee Dee would get them into Disney trips due to the fake illness that Gypsy had. And while she was there, she could have made a plan to ask someone for help. She could have caused a scene and screamed for help, and they would take her away from Dee Dee. Another thing I want to argue is that crimes deserve punishment in general. Gypsy Rose deserves to be in jail on murder charges because she contributed to the murder. She's a criminal for being involved with the murder, and therefore she needs to face any consequences in prison and become a reformed person and able to come back into society. Some people would disagree with my arguments and say Gypsy Rose is a victim of severe abuse from her mother and she had no other options in order to become free. And I would disagree with this because she actually did have other options. She could have told anyone around her after learning that she wasn't actually sick, that something really wrong is happening there. Another thing that people would argue is that Gypsy was very sheltered and she wasn't mentally stable, and that's why she committed the murder, because she wasn't in a proper mental state. She was also drugged by her mother, so she could have been under the influence of drugs. But in my opinion, even if you're not mentally stable, you should still know the difference between right and wrong, and that murder is wrong because everyone should know that. Another counter argument that people would make is that even though she didn't physically commit the murder, that means that she is therefore pretty much innocent. But the truth is that she actually did conspire with her boyfriend. Gypsy Rose and her boyfriend talked about doing this for a while, and they actually made it a plan. Her boyfriend came to the house, and she invited him in to commit this murder and set him up with a knife and all the equipment he would need to commit the murder. They then ran away together, so that just shows you that they had this whole thing planned, and Gypsy was not mad at him in any way for doing this. And that therefore makes her just as guilty as her boyfriend. So to sum everything up, Gypsy Rose was not justified in the murdering of her mother. It's never okay to commit murder, no matter the situation. After receiving this information, it's up to you to now decide whether or not you think this murder was justified.